Today is May 28th, 2021. My name is Kevin Chen. I'm with the Houston Asian American Archive. I'll be talking today with Mr. Hemant Gajarawala, who is educated in engineering and business and also has extensive experience in diverse areas such as energy, utilities, and also investment banking. He's currently the Senior Executive or CEO of Infomax Aggregators LLC and also the CEO of DEVSJ Concrete LLC. He's here today to provide us with an oral history of his life. So thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.
So a few questions about your early experiences. When and where were you born?
I was born in a city called Ahmedabad, AHMEDABAD, in the western part of India. That's where the current Prime Minister is from, Mr. Modi. And it's the fifth largest city of India.
And growing up
in 1941.
And growing up in that city, could you kind of describe some of your early childhood experiences and also kind of what your household was like?
Well, the home is the one that my father inherited from the fifth, sixth or seventh generation. So it's about 250-year-old home. We are three brothers and one sister. I lost my sister in 1970. I was born in 1941. I have an elder brother who is now civil engineer and worked in Pittsburgh, New York, and now he's retired in Jacksonville, Florida. I'll be 80 in November. He is about 83. And I have a younger brother. His name is Jatin, Dr. Jatin, and he's a radiologist in New York, New Jersey area. Now he's in New Jersey. And he was one of the first few medical professionals to understand and explain what the MRI is way back in the early 80s. And he became like a teaching in a teaching profession in Brooklyn College Hospital at the ripe age of 34. And like I said, we lost my sister with smallpox in 1970, way back. Growing up was not easy because my father had to come back from Burma, Rangoon, which is now Yangon, and he had a textile business. And during the Second World War, Japanese bombarded Burma, along with a lot of other countries, other areas. And my father had a textile business. He was one of the experts in textile industry and good with the people. But one of his employees at the last 20 minutes gave his ticket to him so he could escape Burma and reach India. Because my mother, my elder brother, sister, and were in India that time, and she was carrying me that time, 1941. So my friends joke about it that I was conceived in Burma, and I ended up in the city of Ahmedabad. Then he started his own business and work in the textile industry and work very hard to make sure we get education. And he very firmly believes I will live with one meal, but I'll make sure that I have enough money for tuition, take care of your education. And everything worked out good. Like I said, my elder brother is a civil engineer, did very well. I came in this country in 67 after I did my BChem Bachelor in Chemical Engineering from Bombay. And from state of Gujarat, the college I went to, we had only 4 seats in Bombay. And I was lucky to get admission there. All over India competition. Delhi had 1, Bangalore had 2 seats, Calcutta had 2 seats all over. And it was like I hate to use the word, but it was like a cream of the crop who joined the college. It was hard to get in, and it was even harder to get out. And a lot of my ex-classmates are either CEO, president, were running their own companies. Like Asian Paint, we used to play bridge together. He was my classmate. He's a owner, managing director of Asian Paint, which is the largest paint company in Asia, for example. On and on. And then I was dating this girl from my late early college days, and I promised that I'll get married with you. So my last exam was over on April 17th. I had to bribe the railway clerk to get a ticket from Bombay to my hometown, because railway was the most common way to travel. And I invited him with my wedding invitation and money to travel to my hometown. And he was shocked because tickets used to be booked 2 months in advance. And I told him, if you can give me a ticket today, that's okay, or tomorrow, that's fine. And he thought I was crazy. But that's what happened. That's how I came to my hometown, got married. And by the time we came back from honeymoon, the results were announced that I passed. So happily ever.
You mentioned some how important, I guess, education was. Like your father emphasized that. Yeah, what were some, I guess, some other values that your father or your parents kind of emphasized in your upbringing?
Don't touch anybody else's money. Even though you see a $10 or $100 bill on the road, on a sidewalk, even in your property, it is not your karma. It doesn't belong to you. You did not work for it. Don't touch it. To him, the life was very black and white, cut and dry, nothing in between. And even in the school, sometimes we had problem paying having enough money for the tuition for all the 3 kids who were in the schools and colleges. So he'll forego his meal just to make sure that we have it. We would hardly go out on a Sunday for the whole family. If we do, it will be in a nearby park and walking and coming back walking. So, I mean, he instilled those values, but he also had an it was a caste society even today. So he always kept the money at one place where we all knew, we were all told. And if you have a need which is greater than rest of the families, take the money whatever you want, but make sure you write the account. And once I wanted to enjoy some good meal in the restaurant like my other friends, and he decided as a result of that, because there was shortfall, skip the next 4 weeks of outing on Sunday. And that was a pretty tough lesson for me. So that is how he taught the value, not spanking anybody or per se, but showing an example. Then I came in this country. At that time, my son was only 5 weeks old, but I wanted to come here for a higher education and betterment for the family, even though I had a good job back home in India. And my family joined me after almost a year and a half. But if I can divert just a little bit, my father was a firm believer in a yoga, in a self-control, meditation. And he used to take us to the place to teach when we were 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. Till today, for almost last 60 years, I have been doing yoga at least 3 to 5 days a week. And one of the greatest benefits I got when I came to New Hampshire, chemical engineering was one of the tougher lines to follow. At that time, chemical engineering and aeronautics were the 2 tough lines. but I had left my wife and my son in India, so I had a goal. They would only allow, since you are in RICE, at a graduate level, they only allowed us 3 core credit courses, 3 courses, so 9 credit hours. And the totally was 36 credit, including thesis. And I said, I cannot afford it. I know the things, and I came from the best college. I can afford it. But my advisor would not allow me. So I had to wait till he was sick, went to another advisor, temporary, got 3 courses signed up by him. And by the time, we had old 1620 IBM computer. Then later on, they got a new one, 360 IBM mainframe. So by the time they got the result, it was 1.5, 2 months late. And of course, my advisor got mad at me. I said, what the heck am I seeing? You register for 6 courses? Nobody does it. So I explained to him, I showed him my grades. Out of 6, I had 5A and 1B. So I kept showing him one by one. And he said, what you're trying to do? He said, sir, if you think most people should not take more than 3 because of the limitation. Look, I got 5 A's and 1 B. Am I not capable? Okay, not again. This time it's okay. But that's how I did. But in all the fairness to whatever teaching from my parents, I never went to sleep before 2:30 in the morning. I never woke up later than 5:30 in the morning. And I could sleep even today, anytime, anywhere, as long as I want to sleep, 5 minutes, 9 minutes, whatever. And I finished my study in less than 1 year. Most Americans would take in chemical engineering, born in USA, taken understanding the system, would take between 2.5 to 3.5 years. Most foreigners like Chinese, Vietnamese, Indians, Mexicans, South Americans would take between 3 to 5 years with the thesis. And my dedication, thanks to the yoga and discipline, I was done in less than 1 year. So it's not me. It is the teachings of the old country. Yeah. And then after I got a job for a division of Tenneco, they had one division called Packaging Corporation of America, which is listed in New York Stock Exchange now. PKG is a ticker symbol. But we had 56 plants all over the country, including a couple in Brazil. And after working there for almost 5.5 years, I moved to New York. And that was a choice job at a Park Avenue, next door to Waldorf Astoria. So I had a chance to see all the kings and queens and prime ministers from the window of my office, because they all stayed there when they attended meeting of United Nations. And the company had 34 plants, including 2 in Três Barras in Brazil. And part of my job was to work with the EPA, OSHA, and also SEC, Security and Exchange Commission. So I was fortunate to have that much exposure. And then in the meanwhile, I did my MBA from the Pace University, which is right in the Wall Street area. And the keynote speaker for our graduation was Dr. Paul Volcker, who was a boss of Alan Greenspan of the Federal Reserve System. So I was lucky to finish that, but even there also, after a full-time job, I used to go to Washington, DC once a week and other plants. But in the bus, in the train, in the airplane, I always had my textbook with me. And even on a part-time basis, normally full-time takes about 2.5 to 4 years for MBA, finance and marketing. I was a part-timer, and normally it takes anywhere from 3.5 to 5.5 years. But I finished mine in less than 2 years with distinction. So I was fortunate.
Yeah, that's amazing how you're able to do that and complete those degrees in such a short time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was fortunate. And also when I was in Michigan, I know my boss used to say it's very, very tough, but you need to get PE, registered professional engineer. And he said, I failed 3 times, but it's worth it. Go for it. But it requires minimum 5 years of industrial experience to qualify for exam, you know. And I took that exam in writing in the state of Michigan. The very first trial, I was lucky, I passed. So I have that big certificate of professional engineer. And usually almost any major contract of now 10,000 or up, but that time it was $5,000 or up, requires a signature and a seal of a registered professional engineer, just like a land surveyor, you know. So I was lucky to get all those things. And then in 79, I moved to Houston and in a company called Brown and Root. They were at that time part of Halliburton. And I joined. I was the first one, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but kind of different color scheme to join the company as a line manager with the authority of hiring and firing the employees and the review of the salary, all that kind of stuff. It raised a lot of eyebrows. And in the beginning, I was upset. But then later on, I explained to myself that in a lot of cases, if you do a good job, bosses are so busy, they don't have time to look at it. In my case, every other boss was watching me. So I thought if I have nothing to hide, if I do good things, heck, they will know it. So 2 years later, I got promoted and I became their energy and economics manager, about which I sent to you some information. So that time I was involved in financing, working with the World Bank, risk management, and project management, etc., dealing with the agencies, you know, EPA, OSHA. And I've given a lot of time the testimony to state and state EPA in state of Maryland, Virginia, also state of Texas, various places, you know, and also the public hearing with the state Congress or state Senates for a new plant, new approval, environmental impact assessment, you know, those kind of things. So I was fortunate.
You briefly mentioned how because of your race it kind of raised some eyebrows. Would you say you experienced any, I guess, challenges in the workplace because of your race at all? And if you did, how did you overcome?
Race and ethnicity. Well, it goes back to the concept that most, quote, the funny looking people cannot be so smart. I'm talking about 70s, and we still had the civil rights movement going on that time. And it's an offshoot of that, you know. But once in a while, when they finally understood me and experienced it, they were shocked because there are times the big boss would try to show off. So he will shoot about 5-6 questions to you, you know. So how do you know this is the saving? How much money you're going to have to spend? Which year did it start? On and on. And that's a simple way to intimidate the other person. And I think at one time I answered the question in sequence, but the guy, my boss's boss, forgot what he asked me. So he said, what are you telling me? So I said, I answered your question. And there was a long pause. And he said, I forgot what I asked you. So I explained to him, I said, sir, do you want me to tell you what you asked me? And then you want me to answer again what I answered earlier? I mean, that was a nice way of intimidating him. And he never raised his eyebrow against me ever since, you know. And I was not doing anything different. I was just repeating his questions. But I did not allow him to intimidate or make me feel small. I am what I am, that's all. So few incidences like that. Also, even when I was traveling, I mean, you know, a lot of times I would invite the plant manager of various companies Like in Covington, Virginia, we had a bleach white paper manufacturing, almost 1,000 tons a day. Most of that paper is used for the cartons, container, like a milk cartons, etc. And it's 1,000 ton a day. And we were going to expand. And when we went to Germany, we went to UK, Sweden, Finland, different places, especially in UK. The guy will not answer my question, no matter what I ask. And finally, when we met in the officers' mess, Jack, his name, he was asking, I said, Bobby, I said, if you people like our equipment, which is, we are looking for $120, $140 million worth of equipment. And I'm talking about late 70s, a lot of money. He said, who will be the decision maker? Who will sign the purchase order? So my associate said, I'm a plant manager, but Hemant is the one who is in charge of the whole project. So it is he who signs. And all of a sudden, the guy learned how to pronunciate my name. So a few incidences like that. But, you know, it did not down me. I always inserted little humor into it. I made the best out of it.
I learned that you were, or your family was like the only Indian family in Filer City, Michigan.
Yeah,
Can you kind of
actually we
talk a
lived
bit
in
about that?
Manistee, Michigan. Yeah,
Yeah.
Filer
What
City,
yeah.
very small. Manistee, Michigan is about 8,700 people that time, right on Lake Michigan. And between the Filer City and Manistee, Manistee, is a Lake Manistee. And when we got our daughter born in 71, I was joking that there is a 33% increase in the population of Indians. Yeah. But they had never seen, hardly any exposure. So even when the first time we were traveling, going to Grand Rapids, which is 125 miles, people were warning us how to obey the traffic signals and which way to drive, don't be intimidated, so many cars, you know, all that stuff. But very, very nice people, very, very nice people, you know. And they used to tell me, I said, the reason you know so much about pollution, and by the way, EPA was just born in 1970. And then they made me in charge of all the environmental rules and regulations, compliance requirements in my plant. And people used to say, you know so much about pollution. I know why. I said, why? He said, because India means a lot of people, means a lot of pollution. So you know how to solve the problems. So simple was the mindset, you know. But that is the time EPA was formed. And I remember attending the meetings in Chicago, where William Ruckelshaus, the first administrator of EPA, who was formerly the governor of Washington State, came. And a very good conversation, you know. And I had to go to a lot of giving the testimony to the Michigan State Congress as well as the legislative bodies for permitting, for approval of the permits, etc. And it was good experience. You know. I'm fortunate. I got a lot of exposure in various areas.
You mentioned earlier that engineering, you were engineering for a long time. So kind of what spurred an interest in engineering or chemical engineering?
I was always fascinated by chemistry. And since my elder brother was a civil engineer, I had a choice whether to go in mechanical, electrical, or chemical. But there was no chemical engineering being taught in my state that time. So we had to go to Bombay. And that means competition, living alone, more money, lonesomeness, everything. But I had a little problem the first year. I failed, even though everybody who came was a cream of the colleges, from various colleges. But I was too busy writing letter to my girlfriend, lover. I think over the course of my 8 or 10 year long period, I must have written her about 370 letters. I have written probably 70, 75 poetry poems to her. So my friends said, no wonder you didn't have time to study. So
And then here in
that's why by default I decided to go in chemical engineering, because I like chemistry, but it was to go to Bombay was expensive proposition. But I promised my father I'll do it. And if I may divert just a little bit, after I failed the first year, my father, like I say, he was very cut and dry. He said, Hemant, I did not come to see your college. I don't even know what are the subjects in chemical engineering. You told me, and I believed everything you told me. Also, you told me that you are going there for study. And I told you, I will support your studies. But you did not do the study, you failed. So I don't need to support you anymore. It was very cut and dry, simple. So in those days, there were no part-time jobs. You know, I'm talking 1960, 62. So I was doing tutoring, I was teaching students, high school graduation students, and making some money. And that took care of my college, my hostel, meals, everything else. But I had to learn the hard way.
And when you came to the U.S., you mentioned that you furthered your education on engineering, but you also mentioned you went to the Pace University to get an MBA. So as an engineer, what kind of led you to that field in the first place?
Well, one of the things, engineers were, very good with the numbers. But a lot of times they will lose sight of why are you in business? Why are you putting up a new plant? Why are you hiring another person or staff? Because everything has to have a return on investment. And if there is no reward or return on investment, then you should not be in a business. Because in business, the only reason you are in business is to make money for you and for your investors. And I thought that that thing was kind of missing in engineering. So I decided to go for my MBA. Plus, at that time, I was getting exposed with the legislative aspects of the EPA, Security and Exchange Commission, and newly formed Occupational Safety and Health Administration. In the early days, it used to be called Williams-Steiger Act for Safety. It became OSHA. So some way, somehow, I felt there was a gap, and I thought I'll be the one who can help filling that gap. So that's what motivated me to do MBA, even with the 2 kids, wife, and I had to commute in New Jersey, from New Jersey to New York, which was 45 minutes by bus. So it used to be hour and quarter, door to door, each way. But then I learned how to use my time in the bus and train and everywhere. So it was not bad. You know, it's like they say, you get lemon, make lemonade out of it. Right?
And could you kind of talk a bit about, I guess, your first job, like as a project engineer here in the U.S.?
Yeah, that was in Michigan. And pulp and paper industry, we were making, I think about 400 or 450 tons of brown paper, which goes as a corrugating medium in making the sandwich between the box layers. And so I was involved in the purchase of the wood, debarking, using the bark as a waste material for fuel in the boilers and generate the power or electricity, all the way up to the pulping process, chemicals used in pulping process, washing the pulp, making the paper out of it. A lot of times nowadays, those paper machines are running at about 3,000 feet per minute. So that's pretty high speed machines, and that's how the papers are made with different configuration. And that's when I got more involved in harvesting of the trees, like pine, oak, maple, and then when I came down south here, even got more involved with the pine, especially southern pine. And I got involved working with the Swedish Forestry Research Group in help develop the test tube trees. Because the pine, they are coniferous, they have long fibers, longitudinal, while the oak, maple, these are all the hardwood, and the strength is there, but the fibers are very short. So you need some combination of the two in order to impart strength to the papers. So I got heavily involved in those kind of things also, and worked with the Swedish forestry research to develop the test tube trees. And some of the main trees that we try to work on are the southern pine, which includes the ponderosa pine, slash pine, jet pine, all the different ways. And I was very fortunate to run into somebody called Dr. Peter Koch. He was a director of the Forestry Research Group in New Orleans, genius guy. And so we worked together on those.
And now you're.
I hope I answered your question.
Oh, no. Yeah. That's great. And I guess now it seems you, in terms of, work, you've shifted more to, I guess, business development and kind of investment banking. Kind of what caused the shift?
Well, I felt I have a background in technology or technical background. And the missing piece was understanding the finance, public relationship, investment relationship, corporate responsibility, fiduciary responsibility and duties. That part was lacking. And on the other side, all the financial people could not understand the complexity of technology. So I thought I would be a bridge, and that's what I did. So I got involved in working, and as a result of the starting of the work, everything I realized revolves around the money, bottom line. So that led me to the investment banking. I took quite a few exams of the brokerage. So like I said, they have Series 6, which allows people to sell mutual funds. Like a lot of life insurance people, they sell the mutual fund like a part of the annuity. So I took that and I had taken Series 7, which is for all the general securities. And then in order to do the tax shelters, they used to call a DPP or a direct participation programs, about which I sent you some information. You have to have what is known as a Series 22. And then if you are senior and supervising other brokers, then you have to be the principal. So that is another exam, Series 24. And in that one, less than barely 0.5% people pass. It's very, very, very tough exam because you are dealing with other people's money. Right? So even though before you take exam, your hands are fingerprinted and you have to take the oath of this. But I was lucky, I passed that, and I was supervising 8 or 10 brokers in different jobs, doing syndication, joint venture. And that's where I decided to do syndication of cardamom ginger in Costa Rica. I sent you some info on that. Cardamom is the second most expensive spice in the world after saffron. And it requires very unique type of terrain. And India, Spain, and especially Central America were ideal. So I visited Costa Rica several times. And I was fortunate to have met with Oscar Arias. He was an unknown person, But later on, he became the president of Costa Rica. And then he also won the Nobel Prize. But I was lucky to run into him. But we leased 200-acre land in Costa Rica, in Limon province, in the forest style. And because cardamom is a perennial crop, but it takes 3 to 5 years for it to come to maturity before you start reaping the benefits. In the meanwhile, you have expenses like pesticides, get rid of the weeds, all the labor, cleaning up, etc. And you cannot just plant something and walk away for 4 years and hope everything will be okay. So in 72 acres, we planted ginger, which is an annual crop. And it pays for the management expenses, And every year you have to plant it, but every year you make some money and take care of the thing. So after 5 years, when the plants came to maturity, we sold it. And people made good money.
And now you're the senior executive or CEO of Infomax Aggregators LLC. Can you tell me a bit about what this company does, what your company does, and kind of what you do, I guess, on a day-to-day basis?
We started with 0 client. And in 92, 93, I started this. And that was the era where most of the states are beginning to get a wind of deregulating the electric power to the people. Texas was a little bit behind, but California was one of the landmark states. And I went through the rules and regulations and I got myself updated in the process. When the opportunity came in Texas, we were there. You need certification or approval from the PUC, Public Utility Commission. So we got approval for Infomax aggregators as a aggregator. So we aggregate, combine various users and come up with a better price. Let me give you a simple example. I'm sure you have stayed in the hotels. During the daytime, hotels use very limited amount of the energy. But in the nighttime, as people check in, they turn the lights on, the TV on, everything is on, restaurant, this, that. So suddenly there is a surge in the power usage. Office buildings, just the opposite. During the daytime, they use a high. And as the evening is 5, 6, 7 o'clock, the usage goes way down. But the problem is the energy is sold as the whole package, not up and down thing, the whole block of the energy. So what we did was we combined the dissimilar users and tried to match so that the fluctuation during the high and low, like in the hotel, is 3 times. In case of the offices, during the low and high time, it is also 2.5, 3 times. But by doing this, we narrow down the fluctuations to barely 5%. So we are getting the excellent rate from the utility companies because they don't have to go look for lower demand type sale. And we did okay. We started with 0. We ended up with close to 600 clients. Some of the well-known among them is Fiesta, the 35 stores. Like there are Bissonnet and Bel Air store. That time was using close to $80,000 of electricity per month. Same way with the one investors. And we helped them bringing it down significantly. And it was a very interesting challenge, totally different, never studied in a textbook. Same way, La Michoacana, I don't know if you know the name, but 3 brothers started with 2 stores. Today, La Michoacana, there are 140 stores, including in Dallas, San Antonio, Victoria, all over. They're our clients. St. Luke's Sugar Land Hospital, same thing. So we work with in aggregation and help lower the rates for the clients. And if we bring back the refund, rebate, we get, our formula is very simple. Don't adopt us. I'm not going to invoice you anything phony or questionable. If we work hard and if we bring you a refund or rebate, which we will know because of the power of attorney. You keep half, give me the other half. So like St. Louis, so Fiesta, we brought back, I mean, I got some checks, $99,000, $110,000, so on and so forth. St. Luke's Sugar Land Hospital, $50,000 check to Infomex, 2, maybe 3 times. So that's what kept us going.
You seem very forward thinking, and you're a leader in this field. I would say, kind of when did you realize you kind of wanted to be a leader or kind of wanted to establish a company, or were you always very ambitious or motivated?
No, I always take charge, but to being a leader, I am not, because if I ask my wife, I'll be on the last bench. No, I always wanted to do something. You do as good as anybody or better. And that's the same thing I used to tell my son, and my parents used to tell me. It doesn't matter what you want to do. You don't have to be a doctor or an engineer. My father used to say, even if you want to be a shoeshine boy, that is fine with me. But you have to be the best around. And I used to tell the same thing about my son also. And today he is a CIO for Shell, Royal Dutch Shell, based in the Netherlands. And he was in Holland and went to London, then back to Holland. Now he's stationed in Houston. But he has a staff of almost 4,000 people in Bangalore alone. And his staff is scattered in all over the world. And that's the baby I left. He was 5 weeks old when I left India. He's 54.
You're currently very active in, I think, the Houston community. Can you tell me how you came to be one of the founders of Gujarati Sahitya Sarita and
Oh
I guess
gosh.
the purpose, vision of the organization?
Yeah, I have to go back a little bit so I can relate to you exactly what went by how come. A very close friend, not too far from us, he had worked in Saudi for many, many years, and his mother had come living with him. His mother was a school teacher in a small village back in Gujarat state from where I came. And I also enjoy, like I told you, literature, poetry, all kinds of things. And she and I, we used to talk a lot of times. Sometimes my wife and my friend and his wife will be on the sideline. But his mom and I had ongoing conversations for hours. And at one time, my friend told me, I said, it's fun to watch you two. It is almost like you two are the lovers. And we had a daughter born in our family. So we were in the hospital. We played bridge. I also played bridge when I was in Bombay. And did not win the championship, but we were runner-up in Bombay University. But over here, we play bridge 3 times a week with 3 different couples. And they came and waited for us. And finally, they left a note that when you come, call me, we'll come back to you. Okay? They live about 5 miles from us. So when we came back, I said, I'm sorry because of my granddaughter. We were anxious. We were emotionally involved. But yeah, we are home. He said, okay, I'm ready to come. I said, wait a minute. What about your mother? Is she alone? He said, yeah, she's used to being alone. Don't worry about her. I said, no. Just because you and I are going to have pleasure of playing bridge, I don't want her to feel lonely because she was 80, 82. So it's okay. Then, so we went there. Normally, I never take camera with me, but that time I had a camera with me because we came from a hospital with my granddaughter, and I took it with me. My wife was wondering, why you are taking camera? We are playing bridge. I said, don't worry. Deepak's mother came to open the door, and I gave her good news about granddaughter in our family. She was elated, very happy. We took some sweets also. And she said, what else? He said, Grandma, I want to take your picture. He said, me? Why? I said, no, just, his house was full of windows all over. So finally we found a spot. I took her picture. She wanted all of us together. I said, no, I just want you alone. I don't know why. So I took her picture. And of course, then the family. We started, she and I were talking about poetry. My wife, my friend Deepak and his wife were arranging a table for the bridge. And my grandma was asking me, I said, there is one poetry in Gujarati literature talking about confession. Do you remember that? Can you help me? So I sang the first 2 lines of that poetry. I remember all those things. Okay. And she said, oh, now I remember. So she sang the 3rd line. And the next thing, she started moving like this, and I caught her. My friend Deepak and his wife screamed, what is happening? She was in my hand, put her down near my lap. All the 4 of us were rubbing her arm and the legs, tried to rejuvenate her. Got the next door was a medical doctor, got him it. And he said, excuse me, but she's already dead. What a way to go. And it is because, and of course the family, they asked me, Hemant, the way you two were talking, always like a lover. She was always so anxious to see you and talk to you and share all the literature things with you. So you do the eulogy. So I did that in her funeral. But that is what gave me an idea, working with my friend. I said, this lady was so much interested in literature. How can we leave a legacy for her? Sorry. Sorry. And that's where I got the idea. We got the idea of Gujarati Sahitya Sarita, Gujarati literature. We were only 8 people that time. Today, there are more than 300 members. So I don't mean to divergent, but I thought since we are talking Gujarati Sahitya Sarita of Houston, that's important. And I was one of the, of course, founding members. I was a treasurer and organizer for 11 years. And then I turned. And we live with very simple things. We have 2 rules. Number 1, no title. Because when you give title of president or vice president or, all of a sudden the ego goes up. So no president, no title. Everybody will be quoting it. I say, what's number 2? No money. All the evils in the world are because of the money. I said, so we'll have no money. Just minimum $100 in the bank account. I'll give you that, done. So that's how we start. Anytime we had a program, we used to go beg, ask people for donation, and we'll make it happen. But we see everywhere the evils are because of the title and the money, position and the money. So that was the foundation we did. But today, a lot of things have changed.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That's a very touching story. And the organization, I think, is great. And I guess,
My
yeah,
friend and his family, they always told us, I say, you know what, most people suffer so much. She died singing a poetry with you. She loves you, and she died in your hand. What better death can you have? So, sorry. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, it's all right if you need a minute.
Yeah, another few things, like I have my grandson, my daughter's son. He has a myotonic dystrophy and he cannot talk. So I got involved researching which particular chromosomes. We all have 23 pairs of chromosomes, XX or XY. So I got into a lot more detail about those, studied, talked to dozens of different institutions, people, because I wanted to find a cure for my grandson. Finally, now they are beginning to do gene splicing or major genome program. And CRISPR is one of the companies who is doing that thing. So I follow up on all those things. So I love to learn, love to read, and love to make an impact if I can. Otherwise, I know my presence is like a finger in a bucket full of water. Once you take it out, nobody knows the difference. Right?
Yeah. And as I guess you're very involved in the community, are there any other community involvements that you are, I guess, currently partaking in the Houston area?
I used to get very heavily involved in the meditation center called the Preksha Dhyan Meditation Center. But lately I'm not regular. Last few years I'm not because of my situation within the family. So that is another institution in which I got involved. We also have Indo-American Association, but we help, we support, and they bring some of the top-notch artists over here from India, and we relish those. Another thing with another family also, they bring out all the budding artists and give them a platform or stage in their own home. And they bring these artists, they perform, whether it's a dance, music, instrumentation, instruments, or whatever. And just move them up, push them up, and motivate them. So those are a few things I try to do,
And how would you say, I guess, emphasizing your own ethnic heritage is in society, and I guess informing people of your culture or just bringing people together?
I am heavily involved in a few things. I know the Commissioner Richard Morrison of Precinct 1 in Fort Bend County. And also I've met with Vincent Morales, who used to be the mayor of Rosenberg. Now he's a commissioner of Precinct 1 also. And get ongoing communication. The closest one is Mayor Darrell Humphrey. He's the mayor of the city of Kendallton, which is about less than 400 people. But he has been the mayor for a long time. And one of the things I try to work with him, help him motivate the community is in our society, if you have no education, if you're Black, and especially no education, you will go nowhere. So how can we help? How can we motivate, inspire the people to do something other than what their parents have done, so that they can have a different lifestyle and a presence compared to their own parents? So I work with him on those things in city of Kendallton. Actually, just an hour ago, he called and he said, "Hey, I need some help." So, but it's you give back something. And another thing I do also, or did rather, for 4 or 5 years, I was teaching applied economics to the seniors in the high school. And I don't want to be attached to any particular school, so I'll go to 2 different schools only for 2 years, then change the school, like Waltrip High School, Elkins High School, also way out in the Houston area. And this is the program under Junior Achievement. Because most of the teachers, they hardly have enough money to invest in the market. They have 1 year experience 30 times. 30-year experience, but it's 1 year experience 30 times. Very little outside exposure. So they ask us, people like me, to go, and I help them understand what the market is, what the stock market, what is the duty, responsibility, fiduciary, all those things. A lot of times they have hard time, so I say, which shirt is this thing? Oh, this is Nike. Which shoes are these? Oh, these are Reebok. I said, right now. And find three similar competing shirts or shoes company or cap that you have with the familiar things. And I show them, I explain to them, get them involved, set up different teams that let's work which stocks you're going to buy. Any three stocks, you have X amount of money. And they thoroughly enjoyed all these things because nobody taught them this, you know. And you can relate to your own background as you were in the school and how much exposure somebody gave like this, right?
For sure. I guess shifting to more of your personal life, the pandemic has been a challenge for all of us. Have there been any activities or passions that have kind of helped you push through these difficult times?
My interest in Indian classical music, different raga, Western classical music, which I always enjoyed. I know everybody, we have also been in the homes of Beethoven and Mozart. We enjoyed traveling. We have been in about 35 different countries, my wife and I. And, but last 1.5 years has been a halt. But I understand, I try to analyze, I try to understand symphonies of Schubert, like Unfinished Symphony, Mozart, or Moonlight Sonata, or Rachmaninoff, or Prokofiev, uh, Bolero, like Maurice Ravel, all different kind of things I try to learn. I'm really enjoying those things. And another thing I did was under the great courses, which we all get probably in the paper or mail. They have about 120, 130 different courses, whether it's a quantum physics, theory of music, justice system, paintings of the Renaissance era, you name it, they have it. So I subscribe to that. So right now in parallel, I'm taking about 5 courses and I can turn it on anytime, so I spend a lot of time learning. Again, to me, this short period of thing we call a life, you learn. And one thing we believe, coming from the old culture, and we all know, we all talk, all the wealth, material things, money is not going to be with you. Will stay here when you live. But knowledge is the one that will go with you. And that's why people like Mozart, even though he was 6, 7-year-old, he was able to write a symphony for the daughter of the king's wedding that time. Why? How? Because most of the people are born with 0. Maybe he was born with something more than 0 from the previous life. We don't know. But that is, I like to believe it, and based on that, I like to carry on. Because learning is a quest. Because there's always need for a knowledge. And I really enjoy it. So in that case, you don't need anybody. I'm with me and myself, and I'm happy.
And
So,
oh yeah, go ahead.
No, so that is one of the activities. And I teach my grandsons. Grandson just majored in electrical engineering from Texas A&M with distinction. He got a job with NASA. So we communicate quite a lot on a lot of different things, And my granddaughter, she enjoys astronomy and astrology, So I also dwell into that. I am reasonably good in palmistry and acupressure and acupuncture thing, acupressure especially. And I try to share those things with her. So that's the mission of the life.
And I guess on the topic of, the pandemic, you probably heard there's been a lot of anti-Asian sentiment, kind of discrimination, whether, in the workplace or public. Kind of how do you feel about this current climate and state of affairs and I guess the future prospects for Asian Americans?
Well, let me put it this way. I mean, I came in this country in 67. And what I have seen, I mean, there are young kids, they will ring the doorbell. I say, can I help you? And they say, somebody told us that there are some Indians living here. I am saying it in a humorous way. And I was asking them, oh, Indians. So you want to see my cap and feather? I said, yeah. Can you show me? But that is the level of understanding of the world average American has. It is sad, it is pathetic, and I think our job is to help them with education, inspire them. Because I tell everybody is entitled to their own foolishness. It's not anybody's monopoly. And the stupidity of foolishness has no racial barrier. There are blacks, brown, yellow, white. You see it all the way through. There is no discrimination in that case. But our job, I think, as Asian American, is to have, instead of giving a big lecture somewhere, have a small meeting like I talk about Candleton, council members, quite a few people, school districts, and help them understand. Every custom is funny. It's like if you tell Christian that after everybody is buried and dead, somebody will come and raise them and take into heaven. I said, who has seen the heaven? And how many dead people are there buried, and who knows all this? But it is a belief system. And everybody is entitled to their own belief. Whether it's Muslims waiting for Day of Judgment, Qiyamah, or Hindus waiting for reincarnation. Nobody has gone and come back. So we all hypothesize. And when a hypothesis is repeated a dozen times, it becomes a fact, becomes a tradition. So I feel as Asian American, bring out these subtle differences, explain to the people that everybody is entitled to everything. Yes. I also have the copy of Bible, including the St. James and Quran and Gita, all the different things. I read those things. I enjoy this thing. I learn from it. And that is the light we have to take out and illuminate wherever we go. And in the process, the benefit is we also learn.
And so you would say that just general kind of education and exposure is a good method for kind of bridging the cultures together.
Right. Yes, because I can pay somebody TV station to give a lecture for 30 minutes of time, okay? But it doesn't mean anything because people can turn off the TV or a radio, right? There is no substitute for one-on-one type or in a small group meeting. That leads to the positive communication. Because just like any other book, if you don't want to read, you can turn the book, close the book and put it away. Nobody can force you. We used to do that in a Kiwani Club, Kiwani. We used to meet every Wednesday morning for breakfast. All the different ethnicity. And each one has got about 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And once a month, there'll be a keynote speaker. We share. Rotarian is a similar concept, Rotary Club. I used to be in all those things. Rotary Club, Kiwani's Club, And it's a good platform because you cannot change the whole world. Everything has to be done by small steps, little by little. And we light that candle.
And while we're talking about, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm waiting for you.
So we're kind of talking about ethnic heritage and culture. What would you say you identify as? Like Indian American, or do you think these categories even matter?
I don't think it matters. Because those are based on a geographical territory, based on the rulers of whether it's a Mayan culture or Aztec culture or Hindu culture, or like in Japan, we'll say whether it's a Shogun culture or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Because the moment you identify yourself with the Shogun era or with, I'm just giving a light-hearted humor example. All of a sudden, people come up with, oh, I remember what happened to that. We already implanted a lot of biases. Why do it? Yeah. So I just, to answer your question, I see myself as a human being, happened to be born in India, and with luck, with the efforts, whatever, I came in this country to see different things, and I see the whole world. And I think both have a lot to offer. Why don't we bridge it?
And then, when you were raising your children, did conflicts ever arise between you and your children regarding, I guess, different cultural viewpoints or values?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you one incident that happened. I think my son was 17 that time. I got upset with him for something, typical teenage, busy doing whatever he wants. And then I realized I was wrong. So I came close to him and I asked for his apology. Please forgive me. And let me tell you one more thing. I said, it's my mistake, because when you were born, out of 100,000 sperms I gave to your mom, she only picked one and you came. This was the dialogue I had with him, okay? And you came. And you know what? You did not come here with a cookbook, how to raise you. Your mom and I did everything by chance, by taking chance on the job training. So if I goof, I apologize to you. I'm sorry. He looked at me and all of a sudden, he was in tears. He was sobbing. Same with me. It was a new beginning. When today, no matter which part of the world he's in, he's 54, very senior person. His next position is probably the president or a CEO of the Shell, which is $250 billion company. Okay? Maybe we did something right. But even as busy as he is, every other day, no matter which part of the world he's in, he will call. Dad, I have only 3 minutes. I'm going from Poland to Hungary or Hungary to Netherlands. How are you? Is everything okay? Your health? That you cannot force anybody to do. That comes from within, from the heart. And I'm very happy, very proud. That is my treasure. And he's caring, very, very caring person. Even when he was teaching at Houston Community College, we were one of the few who had a compact computer at that time, 256K, if you can imagine. And there were a lot of elderly people, they were scared to touch the computer. I'm talking 80s. You would bring those people home, allow them to use the computer, teach them. And typically, they were charging $10 to $15 per hour. But he, without anybody telling him, he said, but Dad, he's so poor. I don't feel like charging anything to him. So that compassion that comes from within, right from the beginning, and that's where he has been. That's our relationship. So help others. Whether we get a certificate or not doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, for sure. So
it's the right thing to do. That's all.
It's a wonderful relationship you two have. And I guess in light of our discussion, what are your hopes for your grandchildren or your future descendants as they kind of navigate the world we're in right now?
I think the fruits don't fall far from the tree. And I'm old enough to see in my son's son, my grandson, and my granddaughter. My daughter's 2 kids, one is adopted. I see some issues because of the physical limitation. But as far as the love, affection, care, it is boundless, tremendous amount. And, and money is only a medium, so it doesn't matter. I'm not going to take anything with me. So, but my grandson, who is electrical engineer, he's 23, but 10 years ago, he was telling me that, Grandpa, my other sibling has a myotonic dystrophy. He and his mom will need money, which is my daughter. She's 50. We don't need any money. My dad has a good job. Please give everything to them. Now, hearing this from 13-year-old kid, it wetted my eyes. So much maturity, so much understanding. He comes to my home many times. He's working for NASA, but he said, Grandpa, which stock you're buying? Why? Which option? How do you decide which option to buy? He takes notes, like in a classroom. And I share everything with him, nothing to hide. And then, if he's smart, he will become smarter than me. All I do is give a foundation, that's all. I was also a swimming champion at one time in my hometown. I'll send you the picture. In 1956, I won the trophies, backstroke, freestyle, breaststroke, diving, 400 meters, 800 meters, and 1600 meters. In order to compete in 1600 meters, we had to practice 5,000 meters, which is over 3 miles. And I used to go there at 6:30 in the morning over the weekend, work there till 2:30, and no time for breakfast or lunch because I had no money. Limited allowance. But one can do it. And I tell my grandkids, I'm a prime example. It just requires that zeal, that enthusiasm, dedication, that's all.
And yeah, and I guess I have another question about
Sure.
culture. And you've had extensive experience in the workforce, working in different industries as well.
Oh, yeah.
You must have worked with all kinds of people. Do you have any advice to share for people who are interested in, bridging together
Oh,
people?
yeah, absolutely. I was a CEO, Chief Executive Officer for a big project in India. And that guy who hired me is one of the top 20 richest persons in India. Okay. Agrawal is his name. And we had a 45-minute long meeting in Marriott over here, which used to be Adams Mark or Westheimer. And the thing is, I did my homework. He had very specific, he said, I know everything about you, Hemant, but I have only this 3 or 4 questions. And at the end, then he was asking me, he said, do you have any question for me? I said, no. I know which school you went to. You got married with so-and-so at such and such time. You are living here. He said, oh, hell, you did investigation too? I said, yes, sir. 45 minutes, he gave me a charge of 800 crore. That's like 8,000 billion rupees, which is a lot of money in 95, 96. Today, it is not 800 crore, but 2,000, almost 2.5 times more value. And I wrote every purchase order, hired everybody, That was the trust he had, And it was a very unique experience. That time I got a chance to meet with the chief ministers of various states in India and all kinds of things. I'm fortunate. 45 minutes meeting. But that was a tremendous experience. What I saw back in India is a haves and have not big gap, huge gap. But try to bridge the gap whichever way I thought was right, But regarding the Asians, if we go on blowing our trumpet as we are Asian, don't discriminate against us, no matter how many laws you make, every law is there to be broken. just because somebody put a speed limit law, you know, that doesn't mean everybody follows it, right? Laws are made only to be broken. So it doesn't matter is to prevent the atrocity against the Asian American or American Asian, if the different laws are passed by various states, that to me, I think it would not make any difference unless we help with education. And education is interrelationship, even on one-on-one basis, one on a group basis, whatever. So I think that can become effective, and each one then can become an ambassador to convey the message. Yeah, that's my simple thinking.
So that's all the questions I have for you. But if there's anything else you would like to share, or any final messages you would like to provide, you just go ahead. Or
The my wife and I, we have, I don't want to say we are happily married. We have some argument or discussion, but at the end of the day, everything settles down. She has, you're going to talk to her. She has a BS in chemistry and also a law degree. And she was selected in Who's Who in her junior college and all good stuff. She has been an integral part of my life. So much so that she inspired me to write lots of poetry, invoked a lot of emotions, feelings, which I share. But life has been good, and my prayer is always, as a God, you gave me a heck of a lot more than I ever thought I deserved. Thank you. And just like Shakespeare wrote, the whole world is a stage. Everyone has an entrance and exits and roles to play. So I feel I have played my role, and I'll do it even more.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your oral history with the Houston Asian American Archive.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity.